Chapter 5 of Battle for the Stars by Edmond Hamilton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Battle for the Stars. Chapter 5. Kirk stood, his dismay and anxiety increasing by the minute. What was he going to do? He said finally, "We'll have to wait. Furious Man is bound to be along soon." "You mean perhaps stay here all night?" said Lillian. "But food and beds." "We'd better look around," he said unhappily. They found fairly new blankets on the beds, and in the old kitchen cupboards was food in the self-heating plasticpacks. "We can make out," he said, "but it's a hell of a thing." While Lillian prepared their supper, he went out and restlessly walked around the place. The weedy yard ran into brushy fields and nearby woods. The old barn was empty, and the outbuildings were shabby and forlorn. He did not think much of Earth, if this was a sample. He went back inside and helped Lillian solve the puzzle of an ancient sink. Even the reddening sunset light pouring through the windows could not make the old wooden walls and worn cupboards look less stingy. He said so, and Lillian smiled. "It's not so bad. We'll eat out on the back porch. It's less musty there." The porch was not screened, and friendly insects dropped in upon them as they ate. The whole western sky was a flare of red, great bastions of crimson cloud building ever higher. Under the sunset, beyond the fields, the ragged woods brooded darkly. A small animal came soundlessly out of the high grass and stared at them with greenish eyes. "What is it, Kirk? A wild creature?" He looked. "It's a cat, that's what it is. An Earthman in the Star Dream had one for a pet, kept it at base. He called it Tom." He tossed a bit of food onto the step. "Here, Tom." The cat stalked carefully forward, eyed them coldly, then bent to the food. After a moment it turned its back on them and departed. Darkness fell. Kirk began to feel a little desperation. Furious Man hadn't come. What if he didn't come at all? How long could they wait in this forgotten backwater, not knowing what was going on out there in deep space? Lillian said, "Isn't it possible your man is waiting in Orville, that village, and doesn't know you're here?" "It could be, I suppose." Kirk grasped at the straw. "I'll go down to the village. If he's there, he'll see me. Mind waiting, just in case someone does come here?" She said she didn't mind, but he took the compact shocker from his coat pocket and left it for her before he went out. Kirk drove rapidly down the lonely dark road to the village. But the little town looked dark and lonely too when he got there. The shops were almost all closed. He saw only a few people. It was very quiet. In the shadows of the square the old iron soldier stood stiffly. The lights of a tavern caught Kirk's eye, and he went toward it. It seemed about the only place where his man might be, and he needed a drink anyway. He shouldered in, and instantly a small buzz of talk fell silent. Kirk went to the bar, and the men at the farther end of it followed him with their eyes. The tavern-keeper, a bustling, skinny man, hurried up and tried to act as though a deep-space naval commander was no unusual visitor at all. "Yes, sir, what'll it be?" Kirk's eyes searched the rack of unfamiliar bottles. He shook his head. "You pick it. Something strong and short." "Yes, sir. Some fine old whiskey right here." Whiskey, well, he'd heard of that. He drank it and didn't like it. He let his eyes rest on the other man. Could one of them be Furious Agent? He didn't think so. Most of these men looked like farmers or mechanics, hardy-looking, sunburned men, the younger ones tall and gangling. One was a very old man with a straggling beard who shamelessly stared at Kirk with bright, beady eyes. They weren't unfriendly, but they were aloof. Kirk had an idea he'd get a little out of this insular bunch. He might as well go. None of these would be Furious Man. But as he set his glass down, the bearded old man limped forward, peering bright-eyed and inquisitive at him. "You're the fellow who was asking directions to the old Kirk place today," he said almost accusingly. Kirk nodded. "That's right." The old Earthman was obviously waiting for an explanation. It occurred to Kirk that he'd better give one, if he didn't want this whole countryside wondering audibly why a starman had come here. He said, "Kirk's my name. My great-great-something-grandfather, a long time ago, came from here. I'm just looking up the old place, that's all." He turned to go then, feeling that he was wasting time here. But one of the middle-aged Earthmen came forward to him with hand outstretched. "Why, if your folks came from here, that makes you sort of an Orville boy, doesn't it? What do you know about that?" "Vincent's my name, Captain." "Commander," Kirk corrected as he shook hands. "Glad to know you. I guess I'll be on my way." "Say, now, not without me buying you a drink," boomed Vincent. "Not every day one of our own boys comes back from way out there." There was a chorus of agreement, and more outstretched hands and hearty introductions. Kirk stared at them in wonder. What in the world? Then he got it. All over space, the pride of Earthmen was proverbial, and their clannishness. He'd met it, and he didn't like it. He was therefore all the more astonished now that they should suddenly accept him as one of their own. 7 generations, and the whole width of the galaxy between him and this place, yet they claimed him as one of our own boys. He wanted to get out now. He'd found no trace of Furious Agent here, and time was passing, but it wasn't easy to get out. More men kept coming into the tavern as word got around, to shake hands with and buy a drink for the Orville boy from far-off space. Vincent, a jovial master of ceremonies, rattled on with introductions Kirk only half heard. "Jim Barnes, whose farm's up beyond your folks' old place. Here's old Pete Marley. He can remember when there were still Kirks living there." On and on until in desperation Kirk thanked them and shouldered toward the door. "Have to go. My wife's waiting," he said, and a friendly chorus of voices bade him good night. "I'll ride with you far as my own house," said Vincent. Kirk was sweating as he drove out of the village. A hell of a way to conduct a secret job, with the whole village bawling his name. And it had got him nowhere. Vincent's house was the second on the same road. As he got out of the car, he said, "Sure does beat all, you're coming back from so far. Shows it's a small world." "It's a small galaxy," Kirk said, and Vincent nodded. "Sure is. Well, I'll be seeing you. Drop over. Good night." As Kirk drove on, he was faintly startled by an upgush of yellow light that silhouetted the bending trees ahead. A great segment of silver was rising in the sky. Then he realized it was that moon that they'd passed on their way in. The moon of Earth, the moon of the old Earth poems people still read. Not too impressive, but pretty. But how the threads of all you'd read and heard kept subtly running back to this old planet. He supposed some of these flowers whose fragrance he could smell on the warm night air were roses. Funny how much you knew about Earth that you didn't realize you knew. The old road gleamed beneath the rising moon. He glanced up at the star-pricked sky. Had the Kirk who was his 7th grandfather all those years ago looked at the starry sky as he walked this same road? He must have. He'd looked too long, and finally he'd gone out to that sky and not come back. The house was dark when he turned in at the lane, but he saw Lillian's dim figure sitting on the front porch. "No, no one came," she said as he sat down beside her. "And no sign of any agent of Furious in the village," Kirk said. "A fine thing. We'll have to wait." They sat a while in the soft, warm darkness. Kirk's thoughts were more and more gloomy. They couldn't wait here forever, yet he had to make contact as Furious had ordered. Strange glowing little sparks of light drifted across his vision, and now he became aware that the whole dark yard and woods were swarming with such floating sparks. They winked on and off, in a fashion he had never seen, dancing and whirling under the dark trees. "What are they?" asked Lillian, fascinated. "Fireflies?" Kirk said doubtfully. "I remember that word from somewhere." Then he suddenly started and exclaimed, "Hell, what—" A small sinuous body had suddenly plopped into his lap. Two green eyes looked insolently up at him. It was the cat. "It's very tame," said Lillian. "It must have been somebody's pet." "Probably belonged to the last people who lived here," Kirk said. "It's tame, all right." He stroked its furry back. The cat half closed its eyes and emitted a rusty purring sound. "Like that, eh, Tom?" Tom settled down cozily in answer. Lillian reached to stroke its head. With startling swiftness, the cat recoiled from her and leapt off Kirk's lap. It stared green-eyed back at them, then started across the lawn. Kirk turned, laughing. "Crazy little critter." He stopped suddenly. "Lillian, what's the matter?" She was crying, and he had rarely seen her cry. "Did it scratch you?" "No, but it feared me and hated me," she said, "because it knew I'm alien." Kirk said, "Oh, rot. The wretched beast is just afraid of strangers." "It wasn't afraid of you. It sensed that I'm different." He put his arm around her, mentally cursing Tom. Then, as he wrathfully looked after the cat, Kirk stiffened. Tom had started across the lawn toward the dark brush nearby, but the cat had stopped. And as Kirk looked, Tom suddenly emitted a hiss and recoiled. It went away from the dark clumps in long, swift leaps. Kirk's thoughts raced. The cat had recoiled from that brush, exactly as it had recoiled from Lillian. For the same reason? Because someone alien, not of Earth, was in those shadows? He thought he could hear a slight sound, and his muscles suddenly strung tight. Furtious agent wouldn't approach so secretly. Non-Earthmen skulking in those shadows meant only one thing. He said, "Come on in the house and forget it, Lillian. I could stand another drink." But instantly, when inside the house, Kirk made a lunge toward the nearest bedroom and grabbed for the blankets there. He tossed one of the blankets to Lillian with frantic speed. "Wrap it around your head, quick!" She was intelligent, but she was not used to obeying orders instantly and without question. "Kirk, what—" He grabbed the blanket out of her hands and started wrapping it many times around her head, speaking in a whisper as he did so. "Out there, someone. If they want to be quiet about it, they're sure to use a sonic knockout beam. Hurry!" He pulled her to the floor. The blanket swathed her head. He wrapped the other one around his own head, fold after fold. They lay, tense, waiting. Nothing happened. He thought how foolish they would look, lying on the floor with their heads swathed, if nothing at all did happen. He still did not move. He waited. A series of small sounds began in the back of the house, just vaguely audible through the blanket folds. A chattering of windows, creaking and rattling of beams, clink of dishes. The sounds came slowly through the house toward them. Chatter, rattle, leisurely advancing. He knew then he'd guessed right. The sonic beam itself was pitched too low to hear, but it was sweeping the house. It hit them. Lillian stirred suddenly with a small sound, and Kirk gripped her arm, holding her down. He knew what she was feeling. He felt it himself, the sudden shocking dizziness, the keening inside his head. Even through the swathings of thick blanket, the beam made itself felt. Without protection, they'd already be unconscious. The shock passed. The beam was sweeping on to the front of the house. Kirk remained on the floor, his hand still holding Lillian's arm. He'd used sonics himself. He had a pretty good idea of how this one would be used. He was right. The small, half-audible sounds of the house and its shuddering contents came walking back toward them. Chatter, clink, rattle, clink. It hit him again, and he set his teeth and endured it. And again it passed them, and once more the kitchen dishes started talking. Kirk suddenly thought of the unsuspecting Earth folk in the nearby farms, sleeping peacefully in their old houses, without ever a dream that in their quiet countryside alien folk from the stars were pitted in a secret struggle that had this whole ancient planet as its prize. The sound shut off abruptly. Kirk unwrapped his head and twitched at Lillian till she did the same. He made a warning motion to her to keep down, and he himself crawled forward to the old living room. He had the little shocker in his hand now. In a corner of the living room, behind a grotesque old table, he waited. There was no sound at all. Then there was one. Footsteps on the porch outside, coming fast and confidently to the door. A man came into the room. He wore a dark space jacket and slacks. He carried a shocker, and he walked like a dancing panther. Kirk knew him. His name was Tonser. End of Chapter 5.